Okay, so we're back again, and we're going to start doing things which look a little bit closer to the end product today instead of fighting with our dear friends iOS, Flutter, Firebase, all that fun stuff. So yeah, so here we have your basic Flutter demo page, which when you think about it is pretty close to what we want to have for a capacity tracking app. We want to know how many people walk in, we want to hit the plus button when people walk in, and we want to hit the negative button when people step out of the place. Pretty simple, right? Well, we've already got a good percentage of what we need with the basic application that Flutter provides. So if we have a look at it, again, I've got Flutter Run to get things going on the iPhone simulator. If we head over here, we hit plus. This is the standard app that Flutter comes with, and you hit the button and the number goes up. But what if you want it to go down? Well, then you got to do a little bit of work yourself, right? Can't be that easy. So let's go into what we call main.dart. This in the lib folder is where everything starts on a Flutter application. It starts with something called the main, and it tells you what to do. In this case, run the app called my app. And underneath it, we have the class my app. And this is exactly where we're going to go. So I'm going to do a little bit of assumption and figure that you've looked at the Flutter docs a little bit, and where you've played with Flutter a few times yourself beforehand. So I'll go through a little bit of this a little bit quickly, and hope that's all right by you. So again, we've got the basic demo, and we're going to get rid of all of the comments just to make life a lot easier for us to see where we're at. Chop this down, chop that down. Now you will have noticed that this is running inside something called a stateful widget, and we need that to be able to remember the state of whatever variables we want to change on the page. In a later episode, we'll get to putting that back up on Firebase, but for now, we're just going to sketch this app out so that we can see what we want to do with it, and then at a later date, we will add the database back in that we fought so hard to get going. So yeah, we're getting rid of all of the lovely comments, and just takes a second. This is the trailing comma. Yes, it's a trailing comma. So what do we want to do? We want to have 3 buttons. We want the plus button, which we already have. Maybe on the other side, we want a negative button. So when people walk out the door, we hit the negative button and the number goes down. And then if we really mess up, we really need a button to clear things. So let's figure out what we need those functions to do. So we've got one that's built in, which is increment the counter, which sounds about right. So if we wanted one that went down, instead of counter plus plus, we will do, you guessed it, counter minus minus. So let's take the value of the counter and chop it down by 1, or decrement the counter by 1. It's got the blue squigglies, meaning that it's not used anywhere, but we will use it once we get there. And the last function is we want to 0 the counter, right? Or clear the counter. So let's clear this counter, and we'll set the counter equals 0. Pretty simple, right? So now we've got our functions. What do we want to do? Well, this button down here, the plus button, is what's called a floating action button. And by default, you get 1. We want 3. So what we need to do is put that into something called a stack. So we will take the floating action button, click the little light bulb, which allows us to wrap this with something called a stack. If I've done this correctly, and of course I haven't, instead of a child, this one takes multiple children. So we change this to children. And it closes before the end of the stack. So we've got one floating action button, Let's make sure that hasn't broken anything. Reload, no problems. I'm just hitting the R button so that it gets reloaded quickly. I'm a big believer in as many keyboard shortcuts as you possibly can. And we need a second floating action button. But we need to align this one to the left. So we wrap it with something called an align widget, which takes an alignment bottom left. So this one will be the one that decrements the counter. Let's see where we're at now. Hey, we got 1. What happened? I guess we are going to need to align this one as well, since we now have only 1. We probably have 1 on top of the other. Let's wrap this one also with an alignment. Do we get there? Yes, we do. Now I've got 2 plus buttons, but let's see if they're doing what they're supposed to do. This one, of course, goes up, while this one goes back down. All right, so we've got what we need, but we have a padding problem, because by default, a floating action button will have a padding of 32 pixels on the right, so we need to add a padding on the left of 32 pixels. So we will take this, let's do the padding right on the floating action button. And by default, we get a padding of 8 all the way around, and that's not what we want. So we're going to do from LTRB, which is from the left, from the top, from the right, from the bottom. In this case, the only one we're going to want is the left, so 32.0, and the rest we can all zero out. Okay, let's see how that gives us. Hey, that's looking the way it's supposed to. Good. So now, what do we got to do? Oh, we need to change the icon. Now, the one I like to use, especially considering it's COVID and I have a bad sense of humor, is exposure -1. And we'll turn the add button into an exposure +1. And that gives us -1 +1. Perfect. Now the only thing we're going to need to do for the last one is we're going to make it the same as the decrement button. It's going to need the padding. I'll put that next. So instead of bottom left, we'll go bottom center. Same padding, and we are going to, oh, while I'm at it, I didn't change the tooltip. This one, clear, and this is clear the counter. And exposure 0. Perfect. So here we go. We now have -1, 0, and +1. Let's check the 0 button. Perfect. -1. At some point we may want to make it so that that can't go below 0, but for now it's good enough. And plus. Plus works, minus works, 0 works. Perfect. All right, let's do a little bit of cleanup, and we'll wrap this episode up relatively quickly. I'm going to first get rid of Flutter demo page. So home is going to be my home page. Sure, whatever. We don't need to keep the title. So we get rid of the title, getting sent. And we'll change this to Covacity. Oh, and one thing I always do because I hate that little debug thing in the window. It is debug show checked mode banner. Set that to false. So we'll refresh. And the title is not defined for the class. Oh, of course, because that where are we here? App bar. There we go. The title will be a text of Covacity. Perfect. Okay, there we go. Change the name to Covacity, get rid of the little debug banner, and maybe we'll put this above this and say currently in store. And maybe instead of headline 4, make it a little bit bigger. A little bit bigger again? Why not? Oh, why not? 1. Let's go really high and see if we can make it fit off the page. No, I think we're going to be fine unless there's like 10,000 people in there, and that's not really our use case. So, I think that's good for this one. Here we go. So we have 3 buttons. -1, 0, and +1. Looks a little bit better, it's tidied up, and that's good for now. So in the next episode, let's look at maybe turning this into a database function so that we can keep this between different devices. And that is, of course, the goal. See you on the next one, guys. Thank you so very much. Oh, and please, I really need some subscribers. I gotta do it. So you need to be the one to hit the subscribe button. Unsubscribe when I've got like 10,000 subscribers, but for now, I need some subscribers. Hit the button, please. Thank you.